if everyone listening could just take away one thing from this, own your category, own your
Yeah.
box, and have those clear parameters so that you can fit into their world and then educate around that value. And that's how you raise the rates. That's how you position yourself as a partner. Welcome to Built to Scale, where we have real conversations with entrepreneurs just like you about what it takes to build a thriving business without sacrificing your personal life. My name is Craig Severinsen, and I help people make more money working with better clients while also working less. And now I'm sharing it all with you. Let's dive in. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Built to Scale podcast. Today, we've got a very special guest, Amy Mangueira. She runs the Email Growth Society, and I love her outlook on business. So this is a value-packed episode, and there's three things in particular I want you to look out for. So number one, we talk about owning your box or your niche and how when you fully own that, it can really drive growth in your business. Number two, we talk about the importance of thought leadership and educating people around the value and ROI of your services or your offer. And then number three, the importance of having a great network, and she even gives us some tips on how email can actually continue to grow your network. So those are great things to look out for. This is a fantastic episode. Let's dive in. Cool. So Amy, give us a little bit of background. Like, how did you get into doing what you're doing? Like, what was the inspiration for starting your business?
Yeah. So I actually was more of like a self-taught marketer. I started my career as a school teacher. I taught fourth grade, and I was doing marketing on the side as just a way to subsidize my income. And so I actually gravitated back in 2003 to like email specifically, and got really interested on, how we could leverage email lists to bring customers back. I was working at a fitness facility. And so it was really interesting to see that, we would get a lot of people coming in, but they would never sign up. And so how could we start to use this channel that wasn't very popular back then and like bring folks back? So I was getting really proficient with MailChimp. And then over the years, I just started to become a self-taught email geek, I would say. And I learned HubSpot, Pardot, and ended up rolling into sort of a marketing operations role where I actually left teaching. And it was that in that role that I started to really understand how I could really impact business growth with great marketing automation, email marketing in place. And so I would say from there, I sort of moved my way into consulting. And then from that perspective, I ended up like opening up Email Growth Society. But I did it from an inspiration where I just don't necessarily know that any company takes email as seriously as they should. They all want it, but they don't necessarily do it well or put enough resources towards it. And so I sort of created Email Growth Society from this lens of like, how can I gather a collective group of experts and how can we build best-in-class email for brands so that they're building relationships with their clients.
So there's a lot in there that I want to dig into, but let's go back to you're a teacher, right? Because I think that everyone that I have met that has become a teacher, it's like a calling to them, right? Like they want to be a teacher. So like, what is the overlap, or is there an overlap between that calling that you felt to be a teacher versus being an entrepreneur? Like, is there an overlap there, or did you feel like you fulfilled that role and it was time to move on? Like, how did that play in your life, I guess, that dynamic?
It's so interesting that you asked that. I think that at my core, teaching is still something that I'm doing every single day. So I don't necessarily know that I left the calling of being a teacher, maybe in the fourth grade setting. But I feel like today, even if I look at like my first director of operations role, leading into consulting, all the times I've been on stage, and even today, the role that I sit in at Email Growth Society, I am teaching. I'm trying to help people understand the importance, help them understand how to build email, especially these small businesses that don't have huge marketing teams. I'm always looking for ways, how can I provide resources and teach and train and coach so that every company, no matter the size, has a good foot forward with their email marketing. So I think I still am the teacher today.
So then with growing your business, do you feel like teaching has been like a major part of your strategy for growing the business?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. Back when I took my first marketing operations role, which actually quickly turned into a director of demand generation, I started to get a ton of speaking opportunities, working with panels and speaking at conferences. And I do believe that I was able to teach my way into my consulting opportunities, and then from there,
Mm.
flip that into the more of the agency model. And I still find myself like, not only do I look for very specific people for my agency that understand email specifically, but I do find that I'm also spending a lot of time coaching and training my team on the latest, greatest best practices and like how to better help their clients because they're all so different.
I love a lot of what you're saying, and I think I found that true in my life as well. As there's this, we hear a lot like follow your passion, right? But it's really follow your passion and the marketplace, and where do those two things meet, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the sweet spot. Because for me, I actually wanted to be. I went to college first for acting, and actually even moved to LA. I worked for Disney, and while I was at Disney, I was also pursuing an acting career, and I realized that it wasn't really acting that I liked; it was being on stage and teaching. And so, the
Mhm.
pivot from there to running your own business is the same thing, right? Where like I'm getting that fulfillment of what I feel called to, but it's matching the need in the marketplace. And that's, I think, the sweet spot of like, where does your passion and the marketplace align?
I agree. Yes.
So cool. So you're here. You've got this. Your goal is to create a collective of like experts. Where has that taken you from when you started to now? Like, what's the journey been like?
Interesting. The journey has been interesting. So before I opened Email Growth Society, I found that I was taking on consulting roles in most of the time, like mid market or like decent stage growth startups, where I was the consultant. And they were expecting me to like not only develop the strategy, they were hoping that I could help with the email copy. Just, I felt like a lot of companies were looking for this one magical unicorn that could
Huh.
do everything. And the truth of the matter is that email is a very different breed, right? It's got so many different components to it, between like having to get the email into the inbox and then making sure that the messaging is right to encourage the click and then hopefully get that sale. And so I realized that I just, being that one person just wasn't enough. And so I actually made the shift by finding a few folks that I had sort of worked with a little bit in my consulting career that had specifically been working on email in a very specific way. So, like
Mhm.
designers that do UI for email, conversion experts, account managers that are specific to email. They understand email strategy and how to increase different programs for clients, and then even copywriters. And so I really did take a lot of work looking for those very specific experts. And
Mhm.
I didn't ever want to be like an agency. I feel like agencies get a lot of like bad people have bad feelings sometimes, like they worked with the agency and it was a bad experience. And so I tried to create this like collective, almost as if like we together as a unit are the one person that people were looking to hire,
Mm.
right? So I'm hoping and I'm trying to convey that, a lot more as I continue this effort on my business. But it's like, I really believe that it's super hard to find that one person that does it all well. They're always juggling, trying to figure out like, okay, well, if I focus on the strategy, then usually the design and the testing, right? I can't focus there. If I'm focused at the testing side, I start to lose the strategy side. So it's very hard for one person to do all this work. But if we could have a group of collectives that sort of act as one in an organization, how much more impact we can see because we're covering all the bases. That's
Yeah.
sort of like where I'm trying to head and where I've been the last year and a half with Email Growth Society.
It's crazy because like you're describing even just inside of email, all the bases inside of just that one
Yes.
tactic, and how many people try to do all of that for every tactic, right? Like
Oh
they're also
man.
your social, they're also your, this and that and the other. I'm like, man, it can be really overwhelming. And so that brings up a question that I want to ask you. I feel like a lot of people resist. I talk a lot about niche down your audience and niche down your offer. Like be very focused on both of them to get traction. And you've done a very good job at niching down that offer to being like, we own email. Was there ever a time where you were like fighting against that, or was it always just email's my thing and I'm gonna own it?
You know what? That is like the $1 million question. Absolutely. I remember when I was officially like, I'm going to go to market with this company. I'm going to move from consultant to email growth society founder and have this team. I remember saying, should we have some experts on standby in case somebody needs ads or social
Mhm.
media management? And I just remember sitting down with my business coach and he's like, if you were to write down your uniques right now, the first thing that makes you unique is that you only do email, which means that you can come to the table with actual results for clients. Like that is what you do. That is what you specialize in. And I started to be like, okay, I should own this. I should be really proud of this. And I have actually turned down business several
Cool.
times when, we're just not the right fit because they're looking for more of that, again, that unicorn of the master juggler of all the marketing tactics.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because most people they say in theory, "Oh yeah, I turn down people if they're not the right fit," but like they don't actually have a criteria for what
Yeah.
is a right fit and what's a wrong fit, and so that is more of like lip service than actual implementation, right? So I love how you're saying, when we really owned our niche, and our offer, then that gives us a criteria to be able to say, this is a good fit, this isn't a good fit. And because we know that, we can really drive the results that we want to drive. So since
Yeah.
you've made that decision and you focus on the niche, have you ever regretted it, or was it a good decision? What do you think?
It was actually a really good decision. I definitely think we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. There's definitely certain types of companies I've learned that depending on where they are in the growth trajectory of their company, we actually aren't the right fit for. So back to my training side, I have tried to create some like on-demand courses that might be a better fit so that
Mhm.
every company can get their email started. But yes, we have found that being email experts is huge, and just being able to like test regularly and optimize what we're doing regularly, we see the needle moving so much more versus, in the past when you're like trying to focus on the social media, or even if you're just that, again, that one person that's trying to run email, you might not even get to reporting. But we're able to report and have this process that flows so well with clients that they're engaged, we're engaged, and we're constantly looking for like, how can we continue to move you forward? Years gone by, and then they're like, wow, we're still seeing results here. So I do think it's been one of our superpowers.
You're embodying a phrase that I use a lot, which is, we don't want to be put into a box, and instead of fighting that, own the box, own the category, like really just
Yes.
own the whole thing. And there's a lot of empowerment in that, and we as people automatically think in categories. So like
Yeah.
when people hear about you, they're like, oh, email, oh, I see how that fits in because like you're owning that whole box. Versus when we're like, no, no, I don't do, I do everything, then there's no category to put you in. It's too nebulous. We don't know how to respond, and so we miss out on the deal, right? We miss out on the client.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So as you look back on your journey so far, like what has been like the number one thing that you'd say, hey, I'm so glad I did this in terms of helping you grow your business? Like what have been the big drivers that have contributed to growth and success for you?
I would definitely say like making sure that I had that thought leadership side.
Mm,
I think building up to my business, I had already had a really good reputation out there with companies. I was already getting a ton of referrals. And so I think that network that I built and the trust that I built, and I think more than anything, knowing that I followed through with everything that I promised, right? I think that's one thing when you bring in a resource or an agency. Sometimes you sell this, these goods, and then at the end of the day, the client feels like I bought something that didn't actually show any sort of results. So I really spent, I would say, from 2017 to 2020, really building up that network and that reputation for myself. And I would tell anybody, like, you've got to make sure that, like, you can stand on your own and you have that credibility. It's been so invaluable for me. Um, when I then went to make the switch actually to work being like the founder, right, and getting this more
Mm-hmm.
group involved, it was actually interesting because people were still wanting to just work with me because
Mm-hmm.
of that reputation that I built. And so it was more of like, hey, it's not a me, it's a we now. And we've got to, like, we're still giving the same quality of service. We can do more for you now. So I would definitely say, like, building that base of thought leadership and then continuing the thought leadership is super important, that people see you're still out there and you're giving them good, valuable advice. I would also say being like a go-giver. And by what I mean by that is just sometimes when we meet with people, we expect there to be something in return for ourselves. And I've
Mm-hmm.
actually done email marketing where I've said, hey, I've been on your website, I've been a part of your email, and I just would love to give you a couple tips on how to improve, not even expecting that there's a sale potential, and just
Uh-huh.
trying to, like, be somebody to give you advice. And so I think that that's also, been a really nice thing to do for moving the business forward.
So you said something in there that I thought was really interesting in that switching from being like the consultant role to being a team founder role, right? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's one of those keys for scaling the business is removing the founder or the entrepreneur as the bottleneck, right? Like you're
Yes.
making that transition from I'm selling time with Amy, I'm selling my expertise to no, we've got a product and multiple people contribute to it. How has that transition been for you?
It was really, really hard. Not from my, not from where I stand. But I think
Uh-huh.
when you're thinking about, you're starting this new business, you've already got a couple of accounts in that are going underway. Um, then you start to get new leads in and you're like, wow, these are great brands. This is great for business. I can put these logos on my website. But the caveat to it is that, well, they would prefer they're still looking for that consulting side. And so I was initially taking a lot of deals that I could not leverage my team with. And it was still just me. When you then take that and you start to say, okay, now I'm managing a book of business on my own of, let's say, 8 to 9 clients, in addition to trying to run and coach and help my team. It's not a sustainable situation. And so I personally just had to figure out that it was actually okay to start to sell
Mm-hmm.
the we versus me. Like, they might have come because they heard of me and they're excited to work with me, but I had to let them know that I was still in the mix. I'm actually running lead on strategy behind the scenes, but they are in great hands with our account manager. She's going to keep them more on task than I ever would. And we've got experts that are going to execute their campaigns. And I am definitely still going to have, be on their threads, and I'm still going to be involved. That was sort of a hard shift. I was
Yeah.
scared. I
Yeah,
was
you're
scared of
answering.
losing it, losing the credibility. It was hard. It was hard.
Yeah, you're answering my question because at first, the way that I interpreted what you're saying was, oh, I just didn't have the audience for it. I had the reputation built up for consulting, and my question was, well, was it 100% that, or was it mindset? And it sounds like it was kind of both, right? Where it's like you had to
Yeah.
also, it's almost like I think a good, because I went through the same transition, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think that the relatable thing, if you haven't been through that, is remember when you first started your business. It's like going from I'm an employee to holy crap, I just sold something and someone's going to pay me money for it, and getting used to that mindset of wow, I can do that whenever I want. Like I can sell this thing. That kind of like you get used to selling whatever it is you started selling, and now you're kind of shifting a little bit. Where is the value? How do you experience the value as the founder, as the entrepreneur? And how does your client experience the value? And it can be a difficult transition. it's the same as like when you hire a team, right? Like the first time that you have a team deliver for you, you have to realize, oh my goodness, I as the founder didn't do that work. And so to me it feels incomplete, but to the client and to my staff member, they feel
Yes.
complete. And so I've
Yes.
got to experience that value in a different way.
Yes. It's a very interesting transition. It's also been like, I remember when I did finally, when I was okay with like making the switch, and I was like, all right, it's okay to shift these consulting opportunities to the team, if I can. It was interesting, like the QA I felt like I needed to do as well, right? I was like feeling like I was having to hover for a while because I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that the result was exactly how I would have done it myself. And that was what I had built my entire, I just mentioned, like building my whole reputation on like quality and
Yeah.
results. And so I found myself like really too trying not to be like this micromanager, but also like a coach, and trying to catch things along the way and like teach and train. And I feel like because I didn't take the approach as a micromanager, I now have a team that like is in such a good process and they know what to look for, that we actually have this like well tuned machine versus like me having to hover and micromanage. I
That's
didn't think it was
awesome.
going to be possible in the beginning. I'm always going to have to be QAing all this stuff like it to the depth, but it worked out. It did.
Yeah,
It
cool.
worked out.
Yeah, very, very cool. So now, you've made that transition. What challenges as a business in terms of growth are you facing now?
Yes. So, I would say there's two things that are pretty apparent right now. The first one is again back to the mindset of like the value email has as a channel to the company. They know they need it, but they never want to invest enough money into it again, right? So if we put this into light, like we're on Upwork, we're looking for somebody to come work for the company to do email for maybe $25 an hour, if that. So we're like, there's a lot of companies out there that are devaluing the amount of work that goes into email. And again, they're just looking for this person to solve like all of it. So I find that to be the hardest part right now. We've had a lot of calls. I feel like we're getting, we have a lot of people joining our calls to learn more, but again, they're just looking for this like really cheap
Yeah.
resource and they don't understand what's involved, right, in doing really great email marketing. So I would say that's like probably the biggest challenge we're facing right now. And it's almost as if I feel like I need to do an entire thought leadership series for the remainder of the year to really extract the value that great email can provide a company.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Is it also just that, I mean, they're looking for that unicorn, right? But it sounds also that it's just they don't understand the potential, the possibilities with what email could do for them. Is that accurate as well, or no?
I do think so. I do. And, I've seen this movie play so many times. Usually we are coming in after this has already happened. And
Mhm.
so we're dealing with someone who's telling us the same story. And it's like, hey, I brought this person in, but I realized that they were really deficient in design and results management. And we still have money on the table for email. And if I just feel like if I could get to everyone sooner, and let them know that like, hey, just bypass this stage altogether. Um, they would be saving themselves a lot of money and earning a lot more money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, see, and I'm going through this, and in my head, it's like what I love about what you're saying is because I think this is a challenge everyone faces is like I hear it from all of my clients all the time, the same thing. Like, man, I wish my clients treated me more like a partner. Man, I wish they understood the
Yes.
value more. And I think that that education piece is something that is so imperative to always be doing so that you then can use tools like value-based pricing where it's like, okay, we understand the value you can get. So now the price is this because we understand that value. But what I love about your position is that you're so clear about this is the parameters we do with you, that education has really good boundaries, which is, if everyone listening could just take away one thing from this, own your category, own your
Yeah.
box, and have those clear parameters so that you can fit into their world and then educate around that value. And that's how you raise the rates. That's how you position yourself as a partner. Like it's just
Mhm.
great to see. I mean, it's a problem everyone faces, so it sucks that you're facing the problem, but you're in a great position, I feel like, to
Mhm.
overcome it.
Yeah, just to know that like I can laser focus on this on educating around this like one topic is great. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that there's companies out there that have which topic are they even going to focus on because there's so many variables at play. It does make it a lot easier to drill down and get attention in the right way,
So
for sure.
if you had to say, top reasons for why email, right? Like top like 1 to 3, maybe. Like I'm putting you on the spot here, I know. But
Yeah.
if you had to say like what are the top reasons why somebody should do email? Why is it so valuable? What's the answer to that?
So, first and foremost, for business, it is going to give back the greatest ROI because it's what $1 for we get $1 for every or $42 for every dollar spent with our email just because we have acquired the leads and oftentimes we have the ability to upsell, cross sell. Like there's just a million different ways that we can engage once we get folks into our database. So I think that's always the first one is like out of every channel, it's got the highest ROI. And regardless of everything out there that says this is a dead channel, it's certainly not dead and it is like still running full force. So that's always first. The second one, I think that's super important, especially if there's companies out there listening that are like very much like Amazon based companies, like
Mhm.
owning your own database is one of the greatest gifts that we can
Mhm.
have as business owners, marketers, etc. Because we can then understand the database, segment the database, give them content they want at the right time with the right message. And so when you're dealing with like an Amazon store, you might have 900,000 people and that's great, but you have absolutely no connection to build the relationship and understand the database. And so I think there's like this brand disconnect. And so what I always tell our clients is that your database is one of the most valuable things that you own and you can learn so much from it. Even like
Yeah.
feedback surveys. We can send surveys and we can feed it all the way back to like product development. So I would say that email is huge in the ability to build relationships and provide a way of marketing to our database in a whole new way that we just can't leverage in other channels. And I would say definitely last, but certainly not least, there are so many smart ways that we can leverage automation to help us make money while we're sleeping. And so just building out a customer life cycle and knowing like, hey, if I put something in my cart and abandon, I have a catch for that. I have a flow going for that. If somebody is looking at a product and I know that this product is perfect for it as a match, I can run an upsell flow. There's so much, there's so many opportunities to leverage automation that it's virtually becomes a way of like creating these little engines that are running for you, and it's almost like having a full-time employee if you're doing it the right way, having this automated sense. So I would say definitely those three being my top three. I would just wrap this in a bow by just reiterating that like there's so many companies doing email wrong out there. They're constantly pushing promos and everything down folks' throats. But the truth of the matter is that email may be company's biggest relationship builder that the
Mhm.
company has. And so I think it's just so much more important than folks might realize at face value.
I love I love it because I'm all about the relationship marketing. Relationships number one top thing. And one of the things you said in there, in terms of in your second point, you talked about using the database to have conversations that can even track back to like offer development. Man, we underestimate all the time our current audience, our current customers,
Yes.
how much easier it is to do business when you just ask them questions. When you look to them and say, okay, do you like this? Is this what you wanted? And will you buy it? and getting their feedback makes business just go so much easier. It's so good.
Yeah, and I also, to that point, there was this. I love when the little companies that are just starting out, they might not have any resources. It's just one person, but they're actually like they launched their product. They've got some people in their database, and they actually just send a survey out and say, "Hey, notice you haven't made a purchase yet. Can you give me some feedback on my product?"
Yeah,
Do you know how quick you can then like pivot and change your product to like move
totally.
through the marketplace faster? I mean, it's just like mind blowing.
Totally. One of the things I've done in the past is when I do a presentation to the people who have registered, I'll email them before the presentation, be like, "Hey, what are you hoping to take away from this? What are you hoping to
Yes,
get from it?" And I'll adjust my presentation based on the feedback I get straight from them. Like that's the sort of thing that if you leverage email marketing right, man, it can just make you really agile, even if you're a big company. So
absolutely.
So really cool, Amy. We got to wrap up, but tell us if someone wants to get a hold of you, they want to follow you, they want to find out more about how to work with the Email Growth Society. Where do they find more information about you?
Yes, great. Well, if you're wanting just some tips and tricks, you can follow the podcast, Conversations with an Email Guru. It is on most listening channels and out there. Also, website is emailgrowthsociety.com. And if you did have any questions directly, you can always email me at info@emailgrowthsociety.com. Always happy to answer anybody's questions.
Awesome. I love the email marketer giving out an email to reach her. Love it. All right, cool.
Always.
Thank you so much, Amy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey there, Built to Scalers. Jason Croft here. I'm the producer on the show, and I wanted to pop in really quickly to just give you some context around this new segment that Craig and I are including in some of these episodes. So, what usually happens after Craig has one of his great interviews, like the one with Amy that you just watched or listened to, we'll jump in there, create an intro to that episode and all of that. What always happens is this great discussion that's inspired by that interview. Sometimes it's, technical aspects that we'll go through of, what was good, what needs to be improved, all of that. But usually what happens is, we'll dig a little deeper on a couple of topics. Maybe it's something that, I wanted to really get Craig's thoughts on, particular subject that really there wasn't time during the interview that Craig even wanted to go deeper on. So we had one of those great discussions after the interview with Amy. So we wanted to include it here because there were some extra insights. We dug a little deeper on a couple of topics there. So hoping you find that valuable. If you like these segments, let us know and we'll make sure we do more of them. All right, let's jump in. I think it's an interesting topic how she, that's why I sent that note over to you, because it's like you could see it, like she wants to educate the world of like, this is how you need to do this stuff. And
Yeah.
and as entrepreneurs, for all of us, we're knee deep in something and we know it inside and out and we have that desire. I mean, the good ones do, and you should as much as possible, but that balance that you have to do between that and, okay, well, that's going to take all of my energy and they may still not get it. Let me go find the ones who already get it and already value, what I do and all of that. And that's a tough thing to kind of balance and battle out.
We didn't have time to dig in with her, but it's like that education problem is not just her, it's everybody. And the problem is that your clients are, there's so many different ways that you can say this, but the client journey that I like to look at is, are they pain aware? Are they problem aware? Are they solution aware? Right? Like those are the kind of like little checkpoints of where they're at. And like you constantly have to be putting out content and education around those 3 points, because there are some people who are ready, that they know that you're they know that you're the provider, they know they've got a problem, they want to hire, but like most people, sometimes they're not even aware they have a problem, Like she's talking about the email. It's like, how many entrepreneurs, like I'm guilty of this too, how many of them have email addresses that they're just frivolous with or not using properly, and if they just used it right, they would get that 42 to 1 return she was talking about. but as entrepreneurs, they're not even aware that they're throwing the money down the drain, right? Like, so that education piece is something that's just like, it's got to be built into your marketing. It's just constant.
I found, like, I know there's, the B2B space, SaaS companies and things like that, they can use what I do for them all day long, but there's just like this longer education piece whereas coaches, consultants, those folks, they need it just as much, and they get it a lot faster, right? Like they're,
I think that goes back to also what she was saying about networking being such a big part of her marketing. Because I think that if you had like so the coaching industry is more primed, but like say you had deep roots into the SaaS industry and a lot of connections, it's like you've got the inroads to educate quickly because you've got the attention, right? So I think that that's a mix too of like, some markets might be more receptive than others, but if you are willing to dedicate yourself to a market and put in the legwork to talk to people, to go to the events, to have conversations, and not just the superficial, oh, I can help you, but the, hey, are you married? Do you have kids? Do where do you go on vacation type of relationship where you know them, that can make a huge difference in terms of success inside of a market.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's, again, that goes back to that balancing, right? Like, like I could take that broad statement, or I could go like, okay, well, SaaS companies in this industry, I have a couple connections there. Plus, I only need 3 of them, right? So let me go deep, and they're ones that could afford it or whatever that might be. Yeah.
Well, and this goes back to that point. This goes back to what we were saying about it's not just following your passion; it's following where the marketplace and passion intersect. So if you're, again, if you think, oh, I want to get into B2B SaaS companies because that's where the money's at, it's never going to work. You know what I mean? Like, but if you say, I want to get into that because I love those people, this is a chicken and an egg thing, right? Because if you love an industry, you probably already have those relationships, right? Like that's probably, the network's probably already there. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, but like where the passion and the marketplace meet, that's where the money is.
Yeah. And again, it's another layer to it, right? Because that was another part of my journey. It was like, man, I love that world of coaches and consultants too. Like that was another layer that played into it as well. Like we all speak the same language. We get, and so there's a relatability aspect to that too. So yeah.
It reminded me of when I was still trying to figure out my niche, like really figure out who my audience was. I thought for a moment artists, right? I had a cousin who was a really good artist. I was like, man, I've gotten in here. I want to try artist, and I got and I started working with some artists, and I hated it. I hated it. So like, it must not be artists, it must be graphic designers. And it was like 50-50 if I hated it or loved them. And like, what I realized was graphic designers who were in it for the art, I hated them. I hated working with them because it was all about the art, and I was all about the business. And you'd think it would be complementary, but our priorities were different. And then but the graphic designers who were like, this is a business, but I have artistic ability that I'm turning into a business. Those people like really meshed with me. So it's like, that was like on my journey to finding my niche, realizing that there is such thing as like speaking the same language, and that it makes a huge difference.
Oh yeah. And that's a great point too, because, and again, that goes back to educating, that goes back to planting a flag. Like, this is who I'm for, this is who I'm against, and being vocal with, hey, if you're all hung up on the hippie, let's all hold hands and be nice aspect of things, and that causes you to be scared to death to ask for a sale, then we're not a fit. Like, you're not in business, whether you think you are or not. And that's not, I'm here to help people in business, but the stronger and more decisive, then it's, then you don't accidentally stumble upon someone who operates that way, right? And you attract way more of the others.
That's an interesting, in what you said, there's a growth edge for me in there that, you just kind of said it offhanded, but your flag and saying this is the enemy, I think that that's such a powerful tool that I have not leveraged myself very well. And as I've been exploring that idea of, because I don't like to be anyone's enemy, right? Like, I don't want to be I don't want to publicly declare this is the enemy, this is the worst person. And so like that's always something I've railed against, but it is a really powerful tool if there's something and what I've been coming to the conclusion of, like, it's not about having an enemy, it's about speaking the truth as you see it and standing next to that truth, that alignment, that authenticity. And that is going to ruffle people's feathers and create that villain, but you're not actually creating a villain. You're putting the line in the sand of, like you said, planting your flag and saying, this is where it is. And this is how I see it.
Thanks so much for listening. If this episode helped you, share with someone who needs to hear it as well. For more information on how you can work with me and great resources for your business, head over to builttoscalehq.com. Join us next time for Built to Scale. And until then, take some fast, focused, imperfect action. I believe in you. I got your back. We'll talk soon.